The transport ship descended through thick purple clouds toward the surface of Varthon. Corporal Han Jiwoo pressed her face against the window, watching the alien world come into view. Massive cities sprawled across red desert plains, their towers built from dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. This was the homeworld of the Kalth, and everything about it felt dangerous. Jiwoo adjusted the collar of her dress uniform and tried to calm her nerves. She was part of the security detail for Ambassador Park Min-ho, one of the most important diplomatic missions in human history. For decades, humans and Kalth had circled each other like wary predators. Now finally, they were talking peace. Jiwoo's job was simple: keep the ambassador safe and don't cause an incident. The Kalth were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. They stood over 8 feet tall, covered in armored plates that looked like polished obsidian. 6 limbs gave them terrifying speed and strength. Their eyes were crystalline, catching and refracting light in unsettling ways. Worst of all, they were apex predators who had evolved by hunting everything else on their world to near extinction. Most species in the galaxy feared them. Humans were supposed to be different, supposed to be strong enough to earn their respect. The ship landed in the capital city of Razantar with barely a shudder. Jiwoo followed Ambassador Park down the ramp, her hand instinctively checking the plasma pistol at her hip. The weapon felt useless against creatures like the Kalth, but protocols were protocols. Supreme Hunter Tae Kyung waited at the landing pad. He was massive even by Kalth standards, his armor decorated with scars that told stories of countless battles. When he moved forward to greet the ambassador, Jiwoo fought the urge to step between them. His crystalline eyes swept over the human delegation with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The greeting ceremony was formal and cold. The Kalth spoke in deep, rumbling voices that the translators struggled to process. Ambassador Park responded with careful diplomatic phrases that meant nothing and everything. Jiwoo and the other security officers maintained their positions, trying to look professional while surrounded by dozens of Kalth warriors who could tear them apart in seconds. After the ceremony, Tae Kyung offered to show the ambassador the cultural district. It was a gesture of goodwill, a way to demonstrate that the Kalth were more than just warriors. Ambassador Park accepted immediately, and Jiwoo's team scrambled to perform security sweeps ahead of the tour. The cultural district was ancient, filled with temples and monuments that predated human civilization by thousands of years. The buildings were carved from single pieces of stone, their surfaces covered in intricate patterns that hurt to look at. Kalth citizens moved through the streets with predatory grace, giving the humans wide berths and curious stares. Jiwoo walked beside Lieutenant Kang Doyan, her commanding officer, scanning the crowds for threats. Everything felt off. The buildings were too tall, the streets too narrow, the sounds too harsh. She kept her breathing steady and her eyes moving. This was what she had trained for. The tour proceeded without incident for over an hour. Ambassador Park asked questions about Kalth history and art, and Tae Kyung answered with surprising patience. The translator devices worked better here, away from the electromagnetic interference of the spaceport. Jiwoo almost allowed herself to relax. Then the ground shook. It started as a low rumble, barely noticeable. Then came a crack like thunder, and one of the ancient temples began to collapse. Stone pillars that had stood for millennia suddenly gave way, crashing down in clouds of dust and debris. Kalth citizens screamed and scattered. The human security team immediately surrounded the ambassador, weapons drawn. Jiwoo was moving toward the transport vehicle when she heard it. A high-pitched wailing, different from the adult Kalth voices. It came from inside the collapsing temple. Her translator caught fragments. Help. Trapped. Scared. Children. There were children inside. Lieutenant Kang grabbed her arm. Stay with the ambassador. That's an order. Jiwoo looked at the temple, then at the transport where Ambassador Park was being hustled to safety. Every part of her training said to follow orders. The logical choice was clear. But that sound, those frightened cries, cut through every rational thought in her head. She pulled free from Kang's grip and ran toward the temple. Behind her, she heard shouting. Lieutenant Kang was calling her name. Other voices joined in, human and Kalth both. She ignored them all. Her legs carried her through the dust cloud and into the temple's entrance just as another section of roof came down behind her. Inside was chaos. The temple's main chamber had partially collapsed, leaving a maze of fallen pillars and cracked stone. The wailing was louder here, coming from deeper in the structure. Jiwoo activated her exosuit strength enhancement, feeling the servos in her limbs engage. The suit wasn't military grade, just standard diplomatic security equipment, but it would have to be enough. She climbed over rubble and squeezed through gaps between fallen stones. The dust was so thick she could barely see. Her suit's air filters worked overtime, and she thanked every deity she could think of for that small mercy. The wailing grew louder, more desperate. Then she found them. 3 Kalth cubs pinned beneath a massive stone archway that was seconds from complete collapse. They were small by Kalth standards, probably equivalent to human 8-year-olds but already covered in developing armor plates. Their crystalline eyes were wide with terror, and they clawed at the stone with their small limbs. Jiwoo didn't think. She couldn't afford to think. She positioned herself beneath the archway and engaged her suit's full strength enhancement. The servos screamed in protest as she pushed upward against thousands of pounds of ancient stone. Her muscles burned, her bones felt like they would snap, but the archway lifted just enough. "Move!" She screamed at the cubs, not knowing if they could understand. "Get out!" The cubs understood. They scrambled out from under the archway, their small limbs finding purchase on the rubble. Jiwoo held the stone up, her suit's power gauge dropping rapidly into the red. Warning alarms blared in her helmet. Structural integrity compromised. Power failure imminent. The last cub cleared the archway. Jiwoo tried to follow, but her suit locked up. The power cell had given everything it had. She was stuck, holding up a section of temple that was determined to fall. Through the dust, she could see adult Kalth warriors rushing toward the cubs, pulling them to safety. Good. That was good. The children would be safe. The archway came down. Jiwoo had a moment to register the weight, the terrible crushing pressure, and then everything went dark. Her suit crumpled like paper. Her legs shattered. Her ribs cracked. She tried to breathe and tasted blood. Somewhere far away, she heard voices shouting, felt massive hands moving stone, saw crystalline eyes looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then even that faded, and there was only cold. A deep bone-reaching cold that told her something vital in her suit had failed. Her life support was gone. Her body temperature was dropping. Her last conscious thought was simple: worth it. The cubs were safe. That made it worth it. Then Corporal Han Jiwoo, age 28, who had joined the military to prove herself and had never expected to die on an alien world saving alien children, slipped into darkness. Supreme Hunter Tae-kyung stood over the broken body of the human soldier and felt something he had not experienced in decades: genuine surprise. His warriors had pulled her from the rubble moments ago. Her strange mechanical suit crushed beyond recognition, her small body twisted at angles that spoke of terrible damage. She should have been dead. By all logic, she was dead, but her chest still moved with shallow breaths. Blood leaked from her mouth. Her temperature was dropping rapidly, her skin turning an unhealthy shade that his medical training recognized as critical, and yet she lived. The 3 cubs huddled nearby, covered in dust but unharmed. His cubs, his bloodline, the younglings who carried his genetic legacy forward into the future. This tiny human had saved them, had run into a collapsing building, held up tons of stone with inadequate equipment, and ensured they escaped even as it cost her everything. Tae-kyung's secondary arms trembled. He made the call on his communication device with absolute clarity. Invoke the blood pact. Full mobilization. Crimson Fang responds immediately. Around him, his warriors stiffened. The blood pact had not been invoked in over 300 years. It was the oldest law of the Kalth people, predating their civilization, carved into their genetic memory through millions of years of evolution. When a non-Kalth saved a Kalth cub at mortal risk to themselves, they became sacred. The debt must be repaid. The life must be preserved. No cost was too high. The human diplomatic team arrived in a panic. Lieutenant Kang Doyen, the one who had tried to stop the small female from running into the temple, pushed through the Kalth warriors with desperate urgency. "We need to get her to our medical ship," he said, his translator device working frantically to convert his words. "We have the equipment to save her." "No," Tae-kyung's voice was absolute. "She cannot be moved. Her injuries are too severe. She will die during transport. Then bring the equipment here. We can help her, but we need to act now." Tae-kyung looked down at the human again. Her temperature was still dropping. Her life signs were failing. The medical scanner his warriors carried showed internal damage that would kill her within the hour. if not addressed. But beyond that, there was another problem. She was cold. Her species required warmth, and her suit's life support system was destroyed. Even if they stabilized her injuries, she would die from exposure. Ambassador Park Min-ho arrived, flanked by more human security. He took one look at the situation and began speaking rapidly with his medical team. Tae-kyung listened to their discussion. They could transport equipment, but it would take time. They could set up a temporary medical facility, but Ji-woo might not survive that long. Everything they proposed involved waiting, planning, careful consideration. The Blood Pact allowed no such hesitation. Commander Bae-hyun, Tae-kyung said, and his second-in-command stepped forward immediately. The human saved my cubs. She is dying from her injuries and from cold. The Blood Pact is invoked. Make her warm. Burn whatever is necessary. Bae-hyun's eyes widened slightly, but he did not question. He raised his own communication device and began issuing orders to the 500 warriors of the Crimson Fang, scattered throughout the capital. Within minutes, they would all converge on this location. They would have one mission: ensure the humans survived. The Kalth medical facility nearest to the temple became the center of frantic activity. Ji-woo was carried there on a transport stretcher, surrounded by both Kalth and human medics working in chaotic tandem. The language barriers made everything harder, but urgency translated perfectly. Broken bones were set. Internal bleeding was addressed. Synthetic blood was pumped into her failing circulatory system, but her temperature continued to drop. The Kalth facility was built for their species, which thrived in higher temperatures than humans could tolerate comfortably. The medical chamber they placed her in was too cold for her damaged body. Her core temperature dipped to dangerous levels. The human medics shouted for heating equipment, but the Kalth facility had none. Suitable for human biology, Tae-kyung watched through the medical chamber's window as the small human's life flickered like a candle in wind. Unacceptable. She had saved his bloodline. The debt was absolute. Bring fire, he ordered. The Crimson Fang moved with precision born of countless battles. They requisitioned every portable heater in the facility. They stripped thermal units from transport vehicles and power generators. When that was not enough, they began breaking apart furniture. Wooden chairs, decorative panels, ancient ceremonial objects from the temple itself, anything that would burn. Within the hour, massive bonfires blazed in the courtyard outside the medical facility. The Kalth workers watched in confusion and growing alarm as elite warriors fed priceless artifacts into the flames. The heat began to seep into the medical chamber. Ji-woo's temperature stabilized, then slowly began to climb. Ambassador Park Min-ho found Tae-kyung supervising the fires. The human diplomat's face was pale with stress. Supreme Hunter, we appreciate your efforts, but this is not necessary. We can transport heating equipment from our ship. We can move her to a proper human medical facility. This destruction is not required. Tae-kyung turned his full attention to the ambassador. His forearms crossed in a gesture that meant absolute resolution. She saved my cubs, he said simply. The Blood Pact is invoked. Her life must be preserved. Your hesitation could kill her. We do not hesitate. But you are burning historical artifacts. These items are irreplaceable. So is she. The ambassador opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Supreme Hunter, please understand. This could cause serious political complications. The Kalth civilian government will not approve. Our own people will question this level of response. Can we not find a more measured approach? Tae-kyung looked back at the medical chamber where human and Kalth medics worked side by side to save one small soldier, who had been brave beyond all reason. The Blood Pact is not measured, he said. It is absolute. She gave everything for my cubs. How dare you suggest I should give less for her? As night fell over Vrazentar, the fires grew larger. The Crimson Fang expanded their efforts, tearing down wooden structures from the surrounding blocks when the courtyard fuel was exhausted. The cultural district, filled with buildings that had stood for thousands of years, began to burn in controlled demolition. Each structure was carefully selected to produce maximum heat with minimum risk to surrounding areas. Ji-woo's temperature reached stable levels. Her breathing became less labored. The human medics confirmed that if her current environment was maintained, she would likely survive the next critical hours, but weather reports showed a cold front approaching. If her temperature dropped again, all their efforts would be wasted. Commander Bei Hyun approached Taekyung as midnight passed. The scarred veteran had lost his own cubs years ago in a raid. He understood the weight of the blood pact better than most. "Supreme Hunter," he said quietly, "the Civilian Council is demanding we stop. They claim we are destroying irreplaceable heritage. Councillor Park Sun-mi is organizing protests. Let them protest. The ambassador's people say the human will survive now. They say we can stop the fires." Taekyung looked at the weather data on his display. The cold front would arrive in 3 hours. Jiwoo's temperature would drop again. She might survive it. She might not. The blood pact did not permit might. "Prepare incendiary charges throughout the district," he ordered. "If her temperature drops, we burn what remains. All of it." Bei-hyun nodded and moved to carry out the orders. Around them, the Crimson Fang worked through the night, feeding fires that turned the sky orange. Inside the medical facility, Corporal Han Jiwoo lay unconscious, unaware that an entire city's history was burning to keep her warm, unaware that she had accidentally triggered the most sacred law of an alien civilization, unaware that her simple act of heroism had changed everything between two species forever. Supreme Hunter, Taekyung watched the fires and felt no regret. The blood pact was absolute. Honor was absolute. The human had understood this instinctively when she ran into that collapsing temple. Now his people would show her that honor was not a human concept alone. The city could burn. History could turn to ash, but the debt would be paid. The fires were visible from orbit. Admiral Lee Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the Terran battlecruiser Indomitable and watched live satellite feeds of Raisentar's cultural district burning. Orange flames spread across city blocks like a living thing, consuming buildings that had stood since before humans left Earth. At the center of the inferno, protected by walls of heat and guarded by hundreds of Kalth warriors, one human soldier fought for her life. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "Earth Command is demanding an explanation. They want to know why we are not extracting Corporal Jiwoo." Admiral Lee did not take his eyes from the screen. "Tell them the truth. The Kalth will not allow it. Moving her could kill her, and if we try to take her by force, we will start a war." On the planet's surface, the situation grew more complex by the hour. Jiwoo's temperature had stabilized, but the medical team warned that her condition remained critical. The cold front arrived exactly when predicted, dropping the ambient temperature by 15 degrees. Within minutes, her core temperature began to fall again. Taekyung gave the order without hesitation. The incendiary charges detonated simultaneously across 3 city blocks. Ancient libraries burst into flame. Ceremonial halls that had hosted Kalth rituals for millennia collapsed into burning rubble. The dome of heat around the medical facility intensified, and Jiwoo's temperature stabilized once more. The Kalth civilian government erupted in chaos. Councillor Park Sun-mi, a political rival of Taekyung's warrior faction, called an emergency session. She stood before the planetary council with barely controlled fury. "Supreme Hunter Taekyung is destroying our heritage for one alien," she declared. "The blood pact is an ancient tradition, yes, but it was never meant to justify this level of destruction. We must stop him before there is nothing left of our history." The council debated for hours. Some supported Taekyung, citing the sacred nature of the blood pact and the honor of Jiwoo's sacrifice. Others sided with Park Sun-mi, arguing that protecting cultural heritage was equally important. The debate went nowhere. The warrior clans answered to Taekyung alone, and he had invoked the oldest law of their people. The civilian government had no authority to countermand him. Ambassador Park Min-ho found himself caught between impossible positions. His own government demanded he stop the destruction. The Kalth civilian government begged for his intervention. But every time he spoke with Taekyung, the Supreme Hunter's response was the same. "Would you let her die to save buildings?" The ambassador had no answer to that. How could he explain that yes, sometimes the cost became too high? How could he argue that one life, however heroic, was not worth destroying an entire civilization's cultural memory? Every time he tried to form those words, he saw Jiwoo's face on the medical monitors, saw how young she was, saw the scans showing her shattered body held together by medicine and will alone. Lieutenant Kang Do-yoon spent every moment he could beside Jiwoo's medical pod. He watched the monitors obsessively, tracking every fluctuation in her vitals. The Kalth medics had learned to work around him, this human officer who refused to leave his soldier's side. Sometimes Taekyung's 3 cubs visited, Standing silently at the window with their crystalline eyes fixed on the human who had saved them, Kang did not have the heart to send them away. On the third day, something changed. Jiwoo's eyelids flickered. Her fingers twitched. The medical monitors showed increased brain activity. She was waking up. Kang leaned forward, his hand pressing against the transparent wall of the medical pod. "Jiwoo, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused. She tried to speak but could only manage a weak cough. The Kalth medics rushed to check her vitals, their large hands surprisingly gentle as they examined their patient. One of them adjusted something on the medical equipment and Jiwoo's breathing became easier. "Take it slow," Kang said, his voice rough with relief. "You have been unconscious for 3 days. You are badly injured but stable." Jiwoo's eyes cleared slightly. She looked around the medical chamber, taking in the Kalth equipment, the strange angles of the architecture, the orange glow coming through the windows. Then she tried to sit up, gasped in pain, and fell back. "The cubs," she whispered. "Are they safe?" "They are safe. You saved them." She closed her eyes briefly and Kang saw relief wash over her face. Then she opened them again and really looked at the orange glow outside. Her expression changed to confusion, then understanding, then horror. "What is that light? Is something burning?" Kang hesitated. "How did he explain this? Where did he even start?" "Jiwoo, when you saved those cubs, you triggered something called the Blood Pact. It is the most sacred law of the Kalth people. Since you risked your life for their young, they are bound by honor to preserve your life at any cost. I do not understand. What is burning?" "The city. They are burning parts of the city to keep you warm. Your suit's life support failed and you were dying from hypothermia. The Kalth medical facility could not maintain your body temperature. So Supreme Hunter Taekyung ordered his warriors to create fires. When that was not enough, they started burning buildings." Jiwoo stared at him. "How many buildings?" "Currently, about 40% of the cultural district." She tried to sit up again, ignoring the pain. "Stop them. Tell them to stop." "We have tried. They will not listen. To them, this is a matter of honor. You saved their cubs. Now they are saving you. Nothing else matters. This is insane. I did not save those children so they would destroy their own city." Jiwoo's voice rose and the medical monitors began showing dangerous spikes in her stress levels. A Kalth medic moved forward with a sedative, but Kang waved him off. "You need to stay calm. Your body is still healing." "How can I stay calm? They are burning their history because of me. They are burning it because of their code. Because of who they are. You made a choice to save those cubs. Now they are making their choice. This is what honor means to them." Jiwoo fell back against the medical pod, tears streaming down her face. Through the window she could see Kalth warriors feeding more fuel into the fires. The orange glow painted everything in shades of flame and shadow. Somewhere in the city, monuments older than human civilization were turning to ash, and it was her fault. "I want to speak to whoever is in charge," she said finally. "This Supreme Hunter. I want to tell him to stop." Kang nodded. "I will arrange it. But Jiwoo, you need to understand something. The Kalth are not humans. They think differently. What you see as destruction, they see as justice. What you see as excessive, they see as the only moral choice. You cannot convince them with human logic. I have to try." 2 hours later, Taekyung entered the medical chamber. He had to duck through the door, his massive form making the room feel suddenly small. He approached Jiwoo's pod slowly, his forearms held in a gesture that Kang's translator interpreted as respectful greeting. Jiwoo looked up at him, this alien warrior who had burned a city for her. Up close, he was terrifying. Scars covered his armored body. His crystalline eyes held an intelligence that was distinctly not human. When he spoke, his voice was deep enough to vibrate her chest. "You are awake. This is good. My medical staff predicted you would recover. But predictions are not certainties. I am pleased to see you alive." "Supreme Hunter," Jiwoo said, forcing strength into her voice. "I am grateful for your help. You saved my life. But please, I am begging you, stop burning the city. I am stable now. The fires are not necessary." Taekyung tilted his head in a way that reminded her disturbingly of a predator examining prey. "Your temperature has stabilized because of the fires. If we stop, it will drop again. The cold front continues for 2 more days. You could die. I might die. But those buildings will definitely be destroyed if you continue. Please, I did not save your cubs so you would lose your heritage. You saved my cubs because it was the right thing to do. Because children in danger required action. Because your instinct to protect the young overrode your instinct for self-preservation. This is honor. This is what separates thinking beings from animals. Yes, exactly. So you understand why you need to stop. No, Taekyung said, and his voice was impossibly gentle. You misunderstand. You would have died for my cubs. You expected to die for them. How dare you demand that I do less for you? How dare you suggest that your sacrifice deserves only a measured response? The blood pact is absolute because honor is absolute. You gave everything. We give what we can. Jiwoo stared at him, and in that moment she understood something profound about the cult. They were not being excessive or cruel. They genuinely believed this was the only moral choice. To them, letting her die to preserve buildings would be the height of dishonor, a betrayal of everything they believed in. What will it take for you to stop? She asked quietly. Your survival, nothing less. News of the burning spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Holovid broadcasts showed the same images on 1,000 worlds, an alien city burning while an elite military force fed the flames, all to save one human soldier. The story became impossible to ignore. Human collapsed protecting hunter cubs. The elite guard burned a city to keep her warm. On Earth, the response was immediate and divided. Some called Jiwoo a hero whose life was worth any price. Others called her reckless, saying she had caused an interstellar incident through her impulsive actions. The media debated endlessly. Politicians gave speeches. Protesters gathered outside government buildings with signs supporting both positions. Jiwoo's family watched the news from their small apartment in Seoul. Her mother cried. Her father sat in silence, his jaw tight. Her younger brother posted messages on social networks defending his sister, getting into arguments with strangers who called her actions foolish. On Varthan, the Koth people themselves were equally split. The warrior clans rallied behind Taekyung. To them, the blood pact was sacred and absolute. Jiwoo had earned their protection through courage and sacrifice. The fact that she was not Kalth made it even more remarkable. She had acted on pure instinct, without knowledge of their customs or expectations of reward. But the civilian population was not all warriors. Many watched their cultural heritage burn with growing anger and grief. Councillor Park Sunmi led protests in the capital, demanding Taekyung's arrest. Thousands of Kalth joined her, carrying signs written in their flowing script. Our history is burning for one alien. Stop the destruction. Honor is not worth this price. The protest turned violent on the fourth day. A group of young Kalth, filled with rage at watching their heritage destroyed, attempted to storm the medical facility. They carried no weapons, just their natural strength and fury. The Crimson Fang met them at the perimeter. Commander Bae Hyun stood at the front of his warriors, his forearms crossed. Turn back, he ordered. We do not wish to harm our own people, but the blood pact is absolute. We will defend this facility. You defend an alien while our history burns, one of the protesters shouted. How many buildings must die for one soldier? As many as necessary. The standoff lasted 3 hours before the civilian government security forces arrived to disperse the crowd. But the incident made clear how close Varthan was to civil war. The warrior clans would not back down. The civilian population would not stay silent. And at the center of it all, one human soldier lay healing in a medical pod, unaware of the chaos her actions had unleashed. Ambassador Park Min-ho worked around the clock to find a diplomatic solution. He proposed joint reconstruction efforts. He offered human technology to help rebuild what was lost. He suggested monetary compensation, cultural exchanges, anything that might ease the tension. The Kalth Council listened politely and did nothing. They had no power over the warrior clans, and everyone knew it. Lieutenant Kang visited Jiwoo each day, updating her on the situation. She listened in growing horror as the scope of the destruction became clear. Libraries containing texts thousands of years old gone. Temples that had stood since the dawn of Kalth civilization reduced to ash. Art, history, irreplaceable cultural treasures all burning to keep her temperature stable. I want to leave, she said on the 5th day. Tell them I want to leave. I will go to the human medical ship. I will take the risk. They will not allow it, Kang said gently. Taekyung has made that clear. You move when you are well enough that the risk is minimal, not before. People are rioting because of me. The Kalth are turning against each other. How is that honoring the blood pact? How is that worth it? Kang had no answer. He just sat with her, watching the orange glow through the windows. listening to the distant sounds of protests in the streets. On the 6th day, Jiwoo demanded another meeting with Taekyung. This time she was stronger. The medical pod had been adjusted to allow her to sit up with support. Her legs were still immobilized, her body still healing, but her mind was clear and her determination was absolute. Taekyung entered the chamber flanked by Commander Bae-hyun and Scout Leader Choi Rina, one of his most trusted officers. The three Kalth filled the medical room with their presence. Jiwoo forced herself to meet Taekyung's crystalline eyes. "Supreme Hunter, your people are tearing themselves apart. The blood pact was meant to honor sacrifice, not create more suffering. If you continue this path, it will lead to violence between your warrior clans and civilian population." "Is that what you want?" "What I want is irrelevant," Taekyung said. "The blood pact dictates what must be done. Then I am asking you to release me from it. I saved your cubs because it was right, not because I wanted a debt. I release you from your obligation. Let me leave." Taekyung's expression, alien as it was, somehow conveyed sadness. "The blood pact cannot be released. It is not a contract between individuals. It is a law carved into our very nature through millions of years of evolution. Cubs are our future. Those who protect cubs become sacred. This is not something I choose. It simply is." Choi Rina stepped forward, her voice softer than Taekyung's but no less serious. "Corporal Jiwoo, you must understand. If we stop now, if we let you die because our people protest, we become something worse than dishonorable. We become cowards. We become a species that abandons its most sacred duty because it is difficult. But I am not going to die." Jiwoo's frustration boiled over. "The human medics say my temperature is stable enough now. Yes, there is risk in moving me, but there is always risk. You cannot burn your entire civilization to eliminate all risk." "We can," Bae-hyun said. "And we will." Jiwoo looked between the three Kalth, seeing the absolute conviction in their alien faces. They truly believed this. They would watch their world burn before they compromised on this point. It was incomprehensible, yet somehow she was beginning to understand it. "What if I help rebuild?" she asked quietly. "What if I stay after I recover and help restore what was lost? Would that satisfy the blood pact?" Taekyung tilted his head. "You would do this? You would remain on Varthon?" "If it means you will stop burning your heritage, yes. I will stay as long as it takes. I will work with your people to rebuild. My government has offered resources, technology, assistance. Let us use it. Let something good come from this disaster." For the first time since the temple collapsed, Taekyung smiled. It was a terrifying expression, showing teeth designed for tearing flesh. But it was genuine. "This is acceptable. You will stay until fully healed. You will help rebuild. In return, we will limit the burning to only what is absolutely necessary for your survival. The blood pact will be honored, but with your cooperation." "This is good." Jiwoo sagged back against the medical pod, exhausted from the conversation but feeling like she had finally achieved something. It was not perfect, but it was better than watching an entire civilization tear itself apart. That night, Taekyung addressed his people. The broadcast went out across all Kalth networks, showing the Supreme Hunter standing before the medical facility, fires burning behind him. "My people," he said. "The human soldier Jiwoo has agreed to stay on Varthon. She will help rebuild what was destroyed to save her life. This is honor recognizing honor. This is two species finding common ground in sacrifice. The blood pact continues, but it evolves. We will protect her until she is well. She will help restore our heritage. This is balance. This is the way forward." The protest did not stop immediately. The division in Kalth society ran too deep for one speech to heal it. But it was a start. And in the medical chamber, Jiwoo watched the orange glow through her window and tried to understand how saving 3 children had led to all of this. She thought about honor, about sacrifice, about the unexpected ways different species found common ground. She thought about the choice she had made in that collapsing temple, the split-second decision that had changed everything. Would she do it again, knowing what it would cost? She looked at the 3 cubs who visited her each day, their young faces showing concern and gratitude. Yes, she would do it again. And somehow, in a way she could not fully explain, she understood why Taekyung had done what he did too. Honor was not always logical, but it was real. 3 months passed before Jiwoo could stand without assistance. The human and Kalth medical teams worked together, learning from each other, developing new techniques that blended both species' knowledge. Her legs healed slowly, the bones knitting together with the help of advanced cellular regeneration technology. The pain was constant but manageable. She would walk again. She would never run. The cultural district remained a burned scar on the face of Razantar, 40% destroyed, just as Lieutenant Kang had said. Jiwoo insisted on visiting the site as soon as she could move in a hover chair. The Crimson Fang accompanied her, surrounding her chair with warriors who had become something like friends over the long weeks of her recovery. The ruins took her breath away. Massive stone structures stood as hollow shells, their interiors gutted by fire. Ash covered everything in a gray blanket. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air. This was what her life had cost. This was the price of honor. Taekyung's 3 cubs came with her on that first visit. They were older now, growing rapidly as their species did. The eldest, a young male named Ko, walked beside her hover chair with his head lowered. "I am sorry," he said through the translator. "Our lives caused this." Jiwoo reached out and placed her hand on his armored shoulder. "Your lives did not cause this. My choice caused it, and Taekyung's choice, and the blood pact. But not you, never you. But if we had not been in the temple, then you would have died, and that would have been worse." Much worse. The rebuilding began slowly. Ambassador Park Min-ho had worked tirelessly to secure funding and resources from the Terran government. The Kalth Council contributed their own resources, eager to begin restoration. But it quickly became clear that this was not just about rebuilding what was lost. This was about building something new. Jiwoo worked with Kalth architects and human engineers, her hover chair positioned in the middle of planning sessions that lasted for hours. She had no formal training in architecture or engineering, but she had something else, perspective. She understood both species now, understood their values and fears and hopes. She became a bridge between them. The new cultural district began to take shape over the following months. Human technology blended with Kalth traditional methods. Buildings rose that honored the old designs while incorporating new functions. Libraries were rebuilt with both species' knowledge in mind, creating spaces where Kalth history and human innovation could coexist. Temples were reconstructed, but with areas set aside for cross-cultural ceremonies. Counselor Park Sun-mi visited one of the construction sites 6 months after the burning. She found Jiwoo standing now, using crutches but standing, directing a team of mixed human and Kalth workers. The counselor watched for several minutes before approaching. "Corporal Jiwoo," she said, her tone formal but not hostile. "May I speak with you?" Jiwoo turned, recognizing the counselor from news broadcasts. This was the woman who had led protests against her, who had demanded Taekyung's arrest, who had called the burning a tragedy. Jiwoo braced herself for confrontation, but Park Sun-mi's expression was complicated. "I came to see what you were building. I have been watching the progress and I wanted to understand." "Understand what? Why you stayed? Why you are helping? You could have left as soon as you were healthy enough to travel. You could have returned to Earth and never looked back. But you stayed." Jiwoo leaned on her crutches, choosing her words carefully. "I stayed because this is my responsibility. Not just the destruction, but what comes after. Taekyung burned your heritage to honor the blood pact. I cannot undo that. But I can help build something that honors both what was lost and what can be." Park Sun-mi looked at the construction around them. "It will never be the same. No, but maybe it can be something good anyway. Different but good." The counselor was silent for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised Jiwoo. "You have earned a Kalth name among my people." "Did you know this?" "No, what name?" "Ashborn, one who was reborn from fire. It is a name of respect, though many still do not know what to make of you. You saved our cubs, caused our heritage to burn, and then stayed to help rebuild. You are complicated, Corporal Jiwoo. The Kalth prefer things to be simple." Jiwoo laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I prefer things to be simple too. But nothing about this situation has been simple." Over the following months, Jiwoo's title changed officially. She was no longer just Corporal Han Jiwoo of the Terran Diplomatic Security Detail. She became Liaison Jiwoo, a permanent representative between the human military and the Crimson Fang. Taekyung offered her honorary membership in his elite force, the first non-Kalth ever given such an honor. She accepted, knowing it would cement her position but also tie her to Varthan permanently. The Crimson Fang held a ceremony for her induction. 500 warriors gathered in the rebuilt central plaza, their armor polished to shine in the sunlight. Jiwoo stood before them without her crutches. her legs strong enough now to support her weight, though she would always walk with a limp. Taekyung placed a warrior's band on her arm, a piece of traditional armor adapted to fit her human size. "You are Crimson Fang now," he declared, his voice carrying across the plaza. "You are bound to us and we to you. This is honor. This is the blood pact fulfilled." The warriors roared their approval, a sound that shook the ground and echoed off the new buildings. Jiwoo felt tears on her face but did not bother to wipe them away. This was real. This was right. Somehow, through pain and loss and impossible choices, this was right. 1 year after the temple collapse, a monument was unveiled in the center of the rebuilt cultural district. Jiwoo did not know about it until the ceremony. The cult had kept it secret, wanting to surprise her. When the covering was removed, she saw herself immortalized in stone. The statue showed her beneath the archway, her exosuit straining as she held up the massive stone. Below her, the 3 cubs scrambled to safety. It was larger than life, carved with such detail that she could see the determination on her stone face. The inscription at the base was written in both Kalth script and human language. "She gave everything. We gave what we could." Ko stood beside her, now an adolescent Kalth who had declared his intention to join the Crimson Fang when he came of age. "Do you like it?" he asked nervously. Jiwoo could not speak. She just nodded, her throat too tight for words. Around her, thousands of Kalth and hundreds of humans had gathered for the ceremony. Cameras broadcast the unveiling across the galaxy. This was the moment that would define her life, she realized. Not the choice in the temple, though that had started it. Not the burning, though that had shaped it. But this, standing in a rebuilt city surrounded by 2 species who had learned to work together, looking at a monument to sacrifice and honor and the unexpected ways the galaxy could change. Ambassador Park Minho gave a speech. Supreme Hunter Taekyung gave a speech. Counselor Park Sunmi, who had come to respect Jiwoo over the months of rebuilding, gave a speech about learning from tragedy. Then they asked Jiwoo to speak. She stepped forward, still limping, still bearing the scars of that day. She looked at the statue, then at the crowd, then at the 3 cubs who were cubs no longer. She thought about what to say, how to explain everything that had happened. In the end, she kept it simple. "I did not think when I ran into that temple," she said, her voice amplified across the plaza. "I just heard children in danger. The Kalth did not think when they burned their history. They just saw a life worth saving. Maybe that is what honor really is. Acting without hesitation when it matters most. Not calculating the cost. Not weighing the consequences. Just doing what must be done because it is right." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The city burned. Irreplaceable things were lost. I cannot change that. But I can stand here 1 year later and tell you that something good came from it. 2 species learned to understand each other. Warriors learned to work with diplomats. History learned to make room for the future. And I learned that honor is not a human concept or a Kalth concept. It is universal. It transcends species, culture, even the ashes of the past. She looked directly at Taekyung, who stood at attention with his Crimson Fang. "You burned a city to keep me warm. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that sacrifice meant something." The crowd erupted in sound. Kalth warriors roared. Human dignitaries applauded. The 3 former cubs, now young adults, surrounded Jiwoo with their presence, protecting her as she had once protected them. The circle was complete. The debt was paid. But something more had been created. Something that transcended debt and honor and duty. Understanding, connection. Hope. Years later, the story would be told across 1,000 worlds in 1,000 languages. The human who collapsed protecting hunter cubs. The elite guard who burned a city to keep her warm. It became a parable about honor, about sacrifice, about what truly matters when everything else is stripped away. But for Jiwoo, standing in that plaza with the sun setting over the rebuilt city, it was simpler than that. She had saved 3 children. They had saved her in return. Everything else, all the burning and rebuilding and political complications, was just the universe working out the details of that simple exchange. She looked at her statue and smiled. Then she turned away from it and walked toward the future, limping but unbowed, human but also Crimson Fang, carrying the weight of what had been lost and the hope of what could be built. Behind her, the monument stood eternal, a reminder carved in stone. Some prices are worth paying. Some lives are worth burning cities for. And sometimes in the ashes of the past, something better can grow.